Perfect. Hi, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, good evening. We'll send out a poll soon to see where everyone in the world is coming from. Perfect. Ben, where are you calling from today? Canada or Australia?
I am calling from Melbourne, Australia, and it is currently 2 in the morning, but I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Nisha, what about you?
I'm calling from Sandton, Johannesburg in South Africa, and we're a little more lucky because it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Perfect. Same here and from Florence, Italy. Let's see, we can see here. Let me start sharing my screen while people start to filter in. And then I don't know if we want to share the poll results now. Can you guys see, Ben, Nisha, where most people are coming in from?
Not yet, not yet.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
Okay. Oh, a good mix, a good mix. Ben, you're alone in the middle of the night.
I hope so.
Perfect. So I guess while people start to trickle in, we can kind of get started. I'm Hannah Babinos. I'm the head of partnerships over at the Data Appeal Company, as I mentioned, based in Florence, Italy. I don't know. Ben, Nisha, do you guys want to introduce yourselves quickly? For those
Hi.
who don't know you both.
Hi, my name is Nisha Pillay, and I'm the head of insights at South African Tourism.
Ben Vidaz, I'm the co-founder and partner at Destination Think. Happy to be here. Hannah, over to you.
Sounds good. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll be talking about one of those topics that I think is near and dear to destinations of all sizes, whether they're small cities, regions, or also at the country level, where we'll hear from the expert coming from South Africa. So really talking about just kind of how to make sense of data, how to put it together, and really start to make better decisions based on this data. So I'll get started here. There we go. I'll kind of get started today focusing a bit on who Data Appeal is. There's a lot of newcomers to this webinar. So for those of you who don't know us, kind of talk about how a destination can really leverage all the types of data that's available out there. Then I'll hand off to my friend and colleague, Ben, over at Destination Think to really talk about putting this kind of data into practice and really making magic from that. Then we'll hear from the expert in South Africa, Nisha, and she'll talk about some of her use cases and best practices. And then we'll open the floor for you guys. So feel free to start thinking about some questions to ask us at the end. So I'll get started kind of quickly with a quick overview of who is Data Appeal for those of you guys who don't know. So we're, I'll say, a destination data and solution provider, really bringing together a lot of different types of data to have a holistic overview of a destination, but allowing those DMOs to really drill down and get very granular so they can really make those improvements. Kind of the basis of our data is what we call location information, so points of interest. And what we do from there is essentially enrich this with visitor and guest experience. So we will semantically analyze ratings, reviews, and social posts from hundreds of different channels to understand what it is people like and dislike about certain places around any destination. And this even goes beyond just hotels or restaurants or attractions, but we can also look at entertainment venues, transportation points of interest, etc. We've then combined that with some kind of other market insights about what's happening in the destination as a whole. So we'll look at things like flight bookings and searches, hotel reservations and prices, different upcoming events with their predicted attendees and spending to really understand the social and economic impact of tourism. And recently adding on spending data to kind of bring that together to see what is that economic impact. From there, we've also created some unique KPIs that look at a destination's sustainability, their cultural heritage, but also some economic and environmental factors as well. So we've essentially put this together in a platform called DAI Destinations, which is what South Africa Tourism is using to kind of manage all of the data in one place, which I will share quickly. So kind of today we'll be focusing on a couple different data sets specifically, which are sentiment, events, and kind of sustainability holistically. As I mentioned, sentiment is something that's really important to understand the perception or reputation of a destination because we as consumers rely on this information. In fact, almost 100% of us will refer to an online reviews and ratings before we book a restaurant, book a hotel, or make our decision on a trip. So we're kind of, our company always thought, why don't destinations do the same thing in terms of how to make their decisions more effective and more data driven? Just because we know data essentially is a very holistic topic and there's so much that's available. There's destinations that look at things like points of interest and sentiment similar to ours, flight data, mobility insights, sentiment, hotel rates, occupancy. So it's really challenging. I think both of you guys can understand, as a destination, there's a lot of noise happening, a lot of different types of data, and it's hard to kind of put that all into one place. And there's different things destinations need to track, whether that's coming from kind of that inspiration phase when people are thinking about where to go. How can you be top of mind and their deciding factor? Also in that decision phase, when they're in the destination during their journey, how can you be part of them to make sure that experience is living up to their expectations? But also in terms of that sharing, how can you make sure to be top of their minds when they're talking about their trip or promoting that with visitors as well when it comes to your marketing campaigns or your in-destination strategies? So I'll share kind of quickly the platform to get an idea, but I don't know, Ben, Nisha, anything you wanted to add quickly? Easy.
Um,
Yeah, Nisha, go ahead.
I think it's a great platform in that there is a range of information that can be found in a single source. So sometimes looking for information in different sources can be a bit cumbersome, but it's great that everything is structured in a dashboard that is on a single platform. So that's great.
Definitely, thank you. Yeah. This, everyone, is just to kind of get an idea of the platform that South Africa uses. You can see in just a couple clicks, they can get a lot of information about what's happening in their destination, and not only just the major cities like Cape Town or Joburg, but they can go really down granularly to some of these other lesser known destinations that are harder to get data for. Here you can kind of just see just in the last 6 months what's happening in terms of their volume of online content, which is a nice proxy to understand how many arrivals are coming into the destination. And that sentiment score, how that might have shifted over time as an impact to certain events, perhaps even things like weather, natural disasters, different experiences in the destination. And also understand really holistically as a whole, what is it that people like about the country? It's certainly a big destination, and being able to manage it at that very granular level, but also holistically when it comes to the brand itself of each city or the brand of the country. What are our expectations, who those visitors are, and what they're doing? Do they prefer more luxury? Are they preferring kind of more off the beaten track kind of adventures? So really being able to dig into that data. As I mentioned before, the really unique part about our solutions is the granularity aspect. You can see there's information available for every single point of interest. In South Africa, we're looking about just shy of about 90,000 places. This goes between food and beverage, hospitality, attractions. And for every place, we can get some interesting insights. So one thing I was looking at before that I thought was quite relevant was Boulders Beach, which is, I'll say, quite famous to see kind of the penguins coming in from Antarctica. This is one of the highest rated attractions in South Africa. Not only for, I'll say, the cleanliness of the beach, which was interesting to see that it's at 100, which is an amazing thing. But people actually really love the experience itself. So it's definitely living up and exceeding those expectations. However, one thing that we have noticed is things like the entry ticket and the prices have been a bit of a shock for some of the visitors coming in. So the destination is able to go to each of those places one by one to see what are we doing well, how can we keep doing this, or how can we share this with those operators, but also areas of improvement. Everything can also be looked at and analyzed against competitors as well. So you can also see, am I on track, not only at the national level for each city, but versus my competitor set. There's, as you can see, a lot of different types of data that we mentioned before that's available. Another thing I think that's really relevant, especially now, because a lot of destinations do have to look at that ROI, is that social and economic impact of tourism and events. I know South Africa recently hosted the G20, so that was certainly a big event at the national level. And for them to have some information on hand that quickly they can share with their stakeholders, I think has been kind of invaluable for them to get. Here you can see kind of add a calendar overview, what events are happening maybe over the Easter period or 5 months from now, so they can really start planning their strategies, communicating that out with their local operators so hotels can perhaps have their pricing strategies aligned with the event demand, as well as if there are going to be maybe volunteers in a destination as well, where should they focus those people out in the community. Happy to kind of pass the ball around from you now. So talking about, okay, data, what's available, and how can you put that into action? So I'll pass the ball over to you, Ben. Let me go back here. All right, go for it.
Sure, thanks, Hannah. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Vidaz, the co-founder of Destination Think. It's 2 a.m. here, so I've had one coffee. That's enough for me, so I'll try to bring a little bit of energy and sort of discuss why we're partnering up with Data Appeal and why we're big advocates of their platform. Next slide, if that's right, Hannah. Destination Think's sort of been at the leading edge of innovation since 2006, when we became a social media agency, when social media wasn't even a thing. And throughout that period, ever since 2012, we're sort of leading some of the most innovative tourism strategies around the world. That sort of led into destination management, destination stewardship, regenerative planning, and that's become, you know, the buzzword that we all see at the annual conferences around the world. But one thing that we're really looking forward to is sort of, and one thing, a philosophy that we have at Destination Think is not to reinvent the wheel. In 2018, we came out with Tourism Sentiment Index, TSI, which some of you were customers of. And as we built out to about 2023, the QA was like, we need this, we need that, we need this. And we're like, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's see who's doing the best job out in the marketplace. And Data Appeal, kind of exactly what Nisha said, it's all in one place. And they were 5 years ahead of our product development plan that we wanted. And so, you know, partnering and merging TSI into Data Appeal was just the next step of evolution. And that's something that we pride ourselves on, is not trying to compete, but make the right value proposition for our destination clients to have access to that kind of data. So I couldn't be happier to be on this webinar, and what Nisha is going to tell you when we get to drill her with questions and experts is exactly what I want everyone on this call to understand, is that this isn't a combat sport. This is a collaboration, and how we want to make the right information in real time. So next slide, if that's right, Hannah. So something that we're seeing around the world is, and everyone's understanding, what we've got on this slide here is a lot of environmental pressure, some rapid changes in climate. There isn't a destination that isn't affected, whether it's Hannah in Italy or Nisha down in South Africa or myself in Australia. That's evident, but that's also social and economic impact as well on recovery, spend, and what's happening, and the community pressures, the values that we're seeing around the world. My point of this slide is that no destination is alone. There's an impact that's happening, and having access to real-time insights and value proposition for industry and communities is exactly the value proposition that all DMOs around the world should have. And that's something that we're really focusing in on as Destination Think. This isn't, I'll say it again, isn't a combat sport. We want collaboration to solutions, and I'll go on to that in a bit more, but just keep that in mind. We're all tackling similar challenges. Something that we did last year is we sort of asked about 200 clients around the world, you know, what are the major challenges that you're tackling? And you can see there sort of front and center is KPIs is a huge one, but every destination has probably, I would say, 2 to 5 of these challenges on every board meeting. And I see Nisha nodding her head. It's a real thing. So what we've understood at Destination Think is that no destination is alone. And something that we did is actually audit 70 tourism strategies last year around the world to look for what are the challenges that are coming out of DMPs and tourism strategies. And they're almost all the same. So then it comes down to a stage of how do we find these solutions? And something that we did once we audited the 70 tourism strategies, small, medium, and large around the world, is we looked for the solutions, and there actually are world-class solutions around the world that exist. except we're not doing a terrific job of finding them. So something that we're really taking to heart last year at Destination Think is how do we centralize world-class solutions that are happening in the tourism industry every day so that we can get access to them and deliver them to the destinations that need that in real time. Next slide. That's right, Hannah. Like I said before, no one's doing this alone. And what we found around the world is that most destinations are doing one or two things at a world-class level. There's no destination that's perfect. Everyone looks, Australia looks to Canada, Canada looks to the US or New Zealand or South Africa. Everyone, the grass isn't greener, but focusing on what you do world-class, and that's something I think Nisha will look into her dashboard of South Africa, is there are world-class solutions, there's world-class experiences happening in every destination. How do we put the global spotlight on that? And then also, how do we mitigate things that we need improvements on? And that's something that we tried last year, is that the solutions already exist. So our team went out and found about 700 solutions around the world of some of the most challenging destination management plan action items, the implementation, the hard work. The solutions already exist, whether it's from Copenhagen to South Africa to Melbourne to Queenstown. These destinations are putting them into play, and we're doing it informally. Not the best job as a global tourism industry to put up our hand and say, what are the solutions? So something that I want to take out of this Destination Think, we are trying to centralize the world-class solutions. So just next slide, if that's right, Anna.
Yep.
I'm not sure if anyone saw it last year for World Tourism Day, September 27th last year. We actually put 100 world-class solutions together from around the world of best practices of operators on the ground doing world-class solutions to make a green visitor economy. So I encourage anyone to have a quick look at Innovate at destinationthink.com. Lastly, I'll finish off with a positive. DMOs have superpowers. And I think that's something that we can say we don't have an ability to hard action legislation changes. What we do have is a soft influence to make sure that those changes can happen. And there's three things we can do as any industry, small, medium, large, any destination, is we can encourage, incentivize, and celebrate. And the biggest superpower that the DMOs have is to celebrate, and that's storytelling. And that's how we can make decisions at a government or a legislation level, is to make systems changes safe and popular for politicians to make those changes that require the tourism industry to lead climate change and positive green visitor economy. So encourages your strategies and plans, your insights and things like that. Incentivization is industry training and making sure that the funding exists. And celebrate is put the global solutions in a global spotlight. This is the last slide I have. Every time I show this, something light bulb goes off. Something that I want to let everyone know on this slide is you're not actually purchasing data. What you're purchasing is real-time insights to allow wisdom to happen. Forget about the unicorn in the bottom right, that's just a joke. But wisdom allows Nisha to be able to tell her board and her marketing team and her industry what is happening on the ground right now. So access to real-time insights is what you actually are purchasing or want to purchase. And the wisdom allows you to make decisions that improve your economies. So just food for thought. It's not the actual data or the research that, even though that's the budget line items that we pull from, data and information is the what, and the insights and the wisdom is the why and how we go about that. So hope that helps. Feel free to take a quick photo of this slide, because every time I share it, someone's like, yes, I need my board to see this or my boss to see this. So yeah, Data Appeal, great name, but maybe it should be Wisdom Appeal or Insight, Wisdom Appeal. But I'll leave you at that, and I'll hand over back to Hannah. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. No, thank you, Ben. I think you said it perfectly. I always say, data is kind of the red thread, if you will, that kind of links everything together. But certainly it's, the sweater you create from that tells the full story, and being able to take some of these action items into place and see that value. But the two of us will switch gears from the data consultancy side and hear from the expert. So Nisha, we'll kind of pass the ball to you in the hot seat with some questions. The first that kind of we thought about was kind of overall the main challenges that you face trying to gather and analyze all of this data. As we saw, it's a lot of different data, so love to hear from you, kind of your take on that.
Mhm. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate you guys having me today. And it's a real joy for me to be here, so thank you. I know we don't have a lot of time, but sometimes I feel like there's so much to say with regard to data, but let's try to keep it as succinct as possible. So I think if we had to talk about the main challenges that we faced, it's important to talk about the current situation with regard to collecting data for us as an organization. So we've always been a data-led organization, and for many years we've collected data around established surveys. So we have a view of international tourists coming to the country. We have a view of domestic tourists, their performance. And, we spoke earlier about KPIs. KPIs are very important for us because that's how we basically measure our success. We've always been a big advocate of brand studies to understand our brand and how it's performing, and also what levers we should pull in order to improve as a brand. So currently we do leisure tourism brand surveys, we do domestic, we do business events, and then we're also interested in our corporate brand. So we do a lot of brand work to understand which levers we need to pull in order to basically improve. And those have become quite important bedrock surveys for us. The other thing about our data, and I think some of the challenges, is that a lot of our data, specifically the international data, is used as input into the satellite account, which means there's quite robust rules about how we should collect the data in order for it to be used as data for the gross domestic product. So some of the data that we use is quite robust, and it's a bit difficult to change. But now the world is changing. We're moving away from the more time-consuming way of collecting data. And now we're trying to marry our way into the big data element, which is the reason for this webinar that we're having today. So there's a big need for more timely insights. And sometimes traditional surveys are a bit more slower than the timely insights that you can get from big data. And one of the big challenges that we have is always the holistic view of South Africa and what products are currently in the market. As you can imagine, products close, products open, etc., and the turnover can be different. And what's nice about the data that we're getting from Data Appeal is because it's based on reviews of consumers, it's almost like a self-managing database. So you know exactly which products are open and which ones are closed, but being inferred from the reviews. So that's actually quite great. The next challenge that we face as an organization is, how does the old way of collecting data versus the new way of collecting data actually work together? We know that in the long run, there is going to have to be a move towards big data, more so, but how do we make that move given that we've had traditional KPIs? So that is one of the big things. And then also representativity. For example, a lot of the data is from reviews, etc. So how do we make sure that the data is representative of, for domestic, for example, the whole of South Africa, where not everybody has access to technology, etc. So those are some of the challenges that we face.
I'll fire the next question at you, Nisha. We were chatting about this just before we jumped on this webinar, but having all the data that you require on one platform, one database, you said is incredibly powerful to have all the tourism products just because of the diversity and the size, the scale of South Africa. How does that affect and how does that support when you come to tourism planning season? You just mentioned that you're into a new fiscal. What does that? How does that help South Africa and yourself to give that information to the departments that need it?
Okay, so there's so many things to do with planning. So let me talk about the supply side first, right? So one of the big things that we really needed to know as an organization is, how big is our supply side? And it's always been something that we battled with over the years, because it was quite a laborious process in trying to find the information, building it from the bottom up. And once you've actually got we call it, I think in research terms, you got your N, so you know what the population is, it changes. So then you got to go back and you got to start the whole process again. So measuring this supply side monster is one of our big challenges. And what I love about the data appeal data with regard to what it can offer us is, Hannah mentioned earlier, we've got point of interest data. So I can look at the different points of interest all across South Africa and see where you're getting the most traffic, where you're not getting the most traffic. I can see what types of products are being reviewed, which types of products are not getting reviewed, etc. And one of the big things that we need to do as a destination is geographic spread. So this data also enables me to say, guys, these are the over-tourism areas. These are the areas that we actually need to put forth through that have the same experiences as they do in the provinces that are more popular. And I think if we look at the objective of tourism is how do we get the wealth brought in by international tourists and domestic tourists to benefit all South Africans. And I think as one of our big goals, it's this data actually helps us with it. What's really great is also it helps us identify areas with strong tourism potential. So as we're putting our plans together, we can see, for example, there's over-tourism in a certain area. Then we can look at what other experiences can be found in South Africa and where we can actually push tourists to. So when we're planning our itineraries, it's about how do we couple the well-known areas with the lesser-known areas so that we can get a broader spread across South Africa. And this won't be possible without knowing the data on hand. So it helps us in many instances with regard to planning, and it ranges from business events. The data helps us with business events planning because we can see the upcoming business events that are coming into the country, and this is done through any event that's advertised online. So we pick up the events coming up in the next year. You can categorize it by festivals, by meetings, by conferences, etc. So it does help us with planning forward. It helps us with sentiment in that we're able to see, okay, sentiments are possibly dipping in these areas. What do we need to do to increase sentiment? So the data helps us in different ways and in different areas in which we play. I find it quite useful that I think the biggest asset for me is that the data is new. So I can go back as far as 2 weeks and look at the data. If there was something that happened with regard to an event, I can go into that and see if it actually had an impact on sentiment. So I don't have to wait a month or 2 months to get a KPI or survey data. I can get the data very, very quickly in a short space of time.
Thanks, Nisha. I know you just kind of talked about the impact of events and kind of understanding the social and economic impact of them. But I guess, are there any insights some of this event data has been able to give you for, I think business conferences is a big thing in the MICE industry in South Africa that's been able to support your decision making, whether that's on allocating marketing budgets or having people on the ground in terms of staffing? Anything else to kind of share about the event side?
Oh, I really love the events data. I have to say that upfront. So a lot of, working in research for many years, a lot of our insights come from models, because models actually tell us which levers to pull in order to improve. And we've worked with many models throughout the year. And what's nice about the data appeal data is that there are models that are built behind it. So you're not just getting data, you're getting models, and it's insightful in that it adds to our KPIs as an organization. So to talk about the events data, for us to measure events data is quite a time-consuming process because we've got to go to all the areas where events were held, and we manually collecting the data as to when was the events held, how many delegates did you have. We estimate the spend for the delegates and therefore the economic impact. What's great about the events module from Data Appeal is there's a model that's built in already. And it uses estimations for similar types of events that have happened in the past with regard to how many delegates will attend the event or have attended the event. and also what would be the estimated spend. And they also give the spend in the different categories. So you can see accommodation, transport, etc. So I find that quite exciting in that I can have an estimated value of a specific event or even a specific time period for South Africa. And what's even nicer is the fact that it does predictions. So I can look at the next year and have a look at the upcoming events. So that really helps us with planning, but also helps me a bit with reporting going forward. So the events module has helped us quite a bit. And I think with the big thing about moving from traditional ways of measuring into big data ways of measuring is understanding the models that are behind the data. And a lot of the times we owned models, and this time we got to learn more about the model that's put behind the data in order to give it greater credibility. So yeah, I think from events aspect, I find the data quite valuable.
I'm going to second you, Nisha. I like the events module a lot for the predictions, but also for investments going forward. You know, if an event is working, like taking that to another sub-region of South Africa and saying, hey, this was successful. What do you think about doing this? And then also working on shoulder seasons or off seasons, like what worked, what didn't work. And for the marketing team, you know, I kind of joke, it's a bit like roulette, like where do I want to put the chips? You know, which events need my support and which ones are 100% full or tracking well. Let's keep going, Nisha. Destination management is something that is passionate for Destination Think to talk about. You know, when it comes to data appeals platform, what are some of the key objectives that you're using data appeal for when it comes to approaching how you plan when it comes to destination management?
Okay. Thanks for that question. But as you were talking, something sparked in my head. We're having the G20, well, the meetings are happening currently, but the big event is in November. And what really helped me a lot with Destination Think is actually they've collected data on other G20s that happen globally. So it was good for me to see what would be the estimated participation rate and also what the estimated return would be for the country to help us predict what would be ours. So yeah, just on the events with, I just wanted to add that. I thought that was really great. So we're talking about now how we are using data from a data appeal perspective. We've always been a data-driven organization, and we have the philosophy, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So with all our business plans or any plan that we put together, when we have a strategic intent, there is a measure that's always put to it. So that's why data is so important, because after you do a certain activation or event, you need to go back to say, and be honest to say, this was my measure, and have I actually moved against my measure? So that's, we've always been a data-driven organization in that sense. It always ensures if we put the measures against the projects that we have impactful results, and we can go back and say, is this actually turning the dial or not? What's great now with the data appeal data is that we can see more real time if there was an impact, either with regard to sentiment or with regard to popularity or with regard to reviews. So it makes us a little more agile, which I know it's a buzzword for everybody now. How do we become more agile? How do we become agile? But the big data is helping us with this. But there is, however, a trade-off between that and representativity. So with everything with regard to data, there's always assumptions that you need to put in place. So it's how do we move slowly from the traditional way of collecting data into new, faster ways of collecting data, and still trying to be representative at the same time.
That's amazing.
There's always a moment, Nisha, where, you know, on a webinar when you, oh, that reminded me of something. I'm just going to go off script, and Hannah's like just flickers like, oh, hey, where's she going? No, I appreciate that, Nisha. That also reminds me of something when you talk about destination management. You know, for yourself and for anyone listening here, the sustainability module that Data Appeal has, something that I always look at is the carrying capacity, because people, you know, they're like, yes, is over tourism a thing? Carrying capacity, if it goes up too hard, the experience, the visitor experience, drops dramatically. And being able to show someone that from a sentiment and a volume, and even granularly, what are people saying on the ground, can vastly affect in real time how decisions are made to cause carrying capacity to come back into balance. So I think if anyone's had the demo, like the heat map is incredibly valuable to be able to show people like this is over tourism, or this is the carrying capacity is too much on this one weekend to us to invest in another event or anything like that. So I agree with that is something to look at, what you're talking about. Sorry, Hannah, over to you.
No, that I'll say you gave me a spark as well. I was just talking today about over tourism. It's not just crowds. It's not just number of people in a given area. I mean, if it was, then New York City, Beijing would have been, talked about 100 years ago as over tourism. But it's when I think the experience of the visitor and the daily life of the resident comes into question. And I think that's what the nice thing about that sentiment is when you can understand that quantity with that quality aspect. So kind of really putting them at the same table to discuss. But last question, Nisha, we promise then you're off the hook. But I think one thing we really haven't talked about so far is stakeholder collaboration, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who probably make some of the final decisions. So I guess any best practices that you recommend for other destinations joining today that want to kind of enhance that collaboration effort with their stakeholders, especially through the storytelling of data.
Okay. So there's two things I want to say about stakeholders, because from a DMO perspective, there's like two separate sets of stakeholders that we need to deal with. So we spoke earlier about our KPIs. Some of our stakeholders are very used to the old KPIs. So we also got to manage stakeholders slowly along this journey. In order for us to be more agile, we need to move from the older KPIs and maybe look at new ways of measuring things. But that also takes education, that we need to work with our stakeholders in order to understand it. With regard to our stakeholders in the industry, I mean, we're at such exciting time right now with AI, with technology, and everything being at our fingertips. So it's not always going to be an easy journey, but can you imagine if all our stakeholders had to get together and keep our data into one central repository as a country? And I know some countries have done it very, very well. And we are starting on this journey, and hopefully it can be a quick journey with the technology that's available to us now. I believe that the sum of the parts is always bigger than the whole. So in a world where we can actually, as a country, work together to get all our data into a trusted space where everybody has access to, and then it opens up the potential for us to do predictive analysis across data sets. It opens up for us as a country to thrive in the data space. So as far as stakeholders are concerned, it really is a big opportunity for us as a destination to work together holistically in order to grow the destination.
That's amazing. Thank you.
I'm sorry, the lights just went off. I'm just going to have to move around.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
No worries. The natures of doing a live TV show.
Yeah, it will happen. It will happen. My apologies, guys.
No, perfect. Yeah, I think
Load sharing.
concluded. I don't know. Yeah, we shared a couple kind of screenshots. If you just want to kind of talk through them, feel free.
Okay, so I think there's about 3 screenshots that I want to show, and this is just some examples. Sentiment is one of the big matrices that are measured from the data. It's really great because with the graphs around sentiment, you can actually see, for example, if there was a natural disaster, sentiment goes down. If there was really poor service or over-tourism, sentiment goes down. If people are having a good experience, you can see that sentiment basically goes up. And I like the granularity of it because you can look at it in different weeks, in different months, etc. And it helps us to see whether things have been successful and to track the temperature in the country. And the next slide is, we spoke about events. So this is one of the outputs of the events, but I think what you can't see here is that you can actually click down and ask for festivals, you can ask for conferences, etc. My biggest passion point right now is the conferences and that's happening in South Africa and measuring the economic impact. And this is just an example of, it will give you the number of conferences, the name of the conference, the predicted attendance, and also the predicted spending. Sorry, I know we're running short on time. And then
No
the
worries.
last one is around what I was speaking about all the time, about having a stake in the ground as to understand the size of the supply side of the tourism economy. So this will tell you how big the food and beverage, hospitality, attractions are of the total products in South Africa. And then also you can have a look at the digital traces with regard to traveler origin. So here, for example, a lot of the traces are from South Africans, followed by Germany, UK, Netherlands, and France. And obviously this will change in the different times of the year, etc. So it's just to give you a taste of some of the information that we have.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nisha, for your output. I think it's invaluable when we hear a destination so passionate about data and about really creating these data-driven strategies. For Ben and I love it. It's music to our ears. But I guess now if anyone has questions, feel free to put them through the chat there. And then our contact information can also be found here while you guys maybe think about some questions. And then if you guys are interested in kind of finding out maybe the impact of events in your destination, feel free to scan the QR code and let us know or send us an email. But yes, let me stop sharing my screens here to see if any Q&A have come through. Let's see. Let me see here. I can see someone is typing. All right. What are the main struggles for DMOs that they'll have in 2025, and how can data help in respect to the past? So I guess, yeah, that we can see. I don't know, Ben, maybe you want to take this one, or I think it's probably sustainability is the first thing that comes to my mind. I think it tends to be, a buzzword, but a serious one. So I'd say that's my take, but happy to hear from you too.
I'll start if that's right, Nisha,
Yeah.
and then I'll hand over to you for your perspective. I think if I zoom back out a little bit, Hannah, I think global politics are playing a bit of a part in a certain country below Canada, if I could say that. And the value of tourism is being questioned, whether you're a small, medium, and large, whether you're brand USA or a smaller destination. I would say having real-time data insights, being able to share that and create a proactive advocacy of the value of tourism in your destination is probably one that we'll see as the biggest challenge in 2025. Sustainability, destination management, regenerative tourism, sure. I think they are important struggles to be able to put into play to show that not only can we manage it, but how do we show a thriving green visitor economy? I don't think there's a destination in the world that doesn't want that, whether it's South African tourism or the city of Melbourne that I'm in right now. So once you have those insights, Anisha, you probably have a spark in a second, but like, how do we get that out there? It's great to see it in data, but we have to be able to showcase it and celebrate it. And if we can celebrate it, then we make it a safe and popular vote for politicians to approve budget funding, but also to be like, we want to go in that direction. And that's when serious investment and legislation can change for the green visitor economy. That's my 2 cents. Nisha, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think some of the key challenges that we have as a destination, we've seen inflation and we've seen the average rise of costs to get to South Africa come up as one of the big barriers. So definitely the airlift conversation and the amount of flights, the amount of seats and recovering with regard to seats, but we definitely see an upswing with regard to cost of flights, input costs, etc. The great thing, however, in South Africa is because of the exchange rate, you get very good value for money on the ground. So once you are here, there is a great benefit, but the initial barriers around cost and flight time is big. Another barrier is, you're right, you're speaking about real-time data. And then also over-tourism, and over-tourism is a conversation that's happening with most DMOs around the world. And then we all speak about sustainability, but I think the biggest challenge is measuring sustainability. So that is, sorry, one of the models that I also find quite interesting in that with regard to data field, there is a sustainability model. And it was nice that someone has taken that first stab at creating that sustainability model. So it's around the culture in the country. It's around over-tourism. It's about in the environment, etc. So those are some of the challenges that we face. But with every challenge, we got to have measures to see if we're actually digging ourselves out of the challenge or not.
Definitely. That was super interesting, your first point, Nisha, about once you're kind of on the ground, it is a more affordable destination. I'm wondering, you as a destination, are you promoting longer stays for that? So while you're here, why don't you just stay a while type of advertising or type of messaging?
Yes, we've actually even seen it in our data. So it's something that's inherent. So when people are on the ground and they actually see the cost, we've seen actually our length of stay go up over the last 2 years. So yeah, it is something that we have seen as a trend.
That's amazing. I think especially with all, the city breaks and now people just trying to squeeze in, holidays here and there. It's nice to see a destination really leveraging kind of that because, economically, environmentally, it does make a big impact at the end of the day when you can even stretch it out 2 nights.
Yeah, yeah. And it's more of a short-term strategy. So it's not something that we look at for long-term growth, but it is something that you can take advantage of in the short term.
Definitely. Going on to the next question, see there's one about the source of the data. I'll say a lot of different sources, kind of that sentiment piece is really built from about, hundreds of these kind of online channels that we aggregate for each of these points of interest. And then there's, of course, other sources for the flights, the sustainability, the events, the hotel prices. So our job has really been, how can we put that together and make that, that holistic overview with just, a couple clicks to see what's going on. Another question on the sustainability piece. I know you mentioned it a little bit, Nisha, but Lindsay's sharing what types of data there are for sustainability and which ones are most relevant. So I think overall, I think there's 17 different KPIs going from the environmental side to the social and cultural side to kind of that over tourism destination management. But as a destination, are there ones that resonate the most or have maybe a different type of meaning for you?
I actually found it quite interesting in that in part of one of the pillars, there was the LGBTQ plus uh, index, which actually was one of the other things that we were trying to measure. So it's actually quite good because then you can see, is your destination LGBTQ friendly? Which are the products that are appealing or does well? So it's quite an interesting model if you double click on it, because under each of the 4 pillars that we have in the model, there's like 3 or 4 other metrics that are measured within it. So yeah, I think especially with the models, what's important is for you to understand what actually goes behind it, how each of the different pillars are basically weighted, so you can understand the intricacies behind it. And for me, what's very important is to understand the model. The model mustn't be a black box. So if you understand the models, the more value you'll get out of the models, and the more you can use the data in a meaningful way.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I quickly add to that, Nisha. Lindsay from Jackson Hole. Lindsay, you need to have a quick demo of the sustainability module because of the reasons. When you say sustainability, it usually skews towards green, the environment. Nisha really nailed that one. And I agree with Nisha. Like, Data Appeals put a line in the sand and said, like, hey, it's not perfect, but we're growing. And Hannah and I have talked about carbon emissions in the past, and she's like, hey, watch this space, we're going to move in that direction. So the R&D behind it is solid and progressive, and they want to take on those kind of things. So if anyone's on this call or this webinar, if there's a KPI or a thought, like, definitely get in touch with Hannah because they want to make it even more robust. So agree with Nisha. Back to you, Hannah. Sorry.
No, thank you, Ben. Yeah, I see last question coming in from Safir Jamal, asking about, do DMOs get customized questions and the type of data that's collected displayed on the dashboard? How does it work? I'll say easy answer, yes. So all those modules that we kind of share are optional. So you can essentially kind of pick and choose or kind of a la carte menu what's relevant to you. So for example, if you're in a destination without an airport, flight travel isn't something that's relevant, it's an option not to include it. So yes, everything is customizable in that aspect. Another question coming in from Evan, is there a cost sharing or co-op model that you've seen for DMO's work? Definitely, yeah. This is probably another theme Ben and I talk about quite frequently, both at, I'll say, the destination side. So if you are sitting within a destination with sub DMOs below you, or you are part of a regional or a provincial or a state DMO, definitely there are kind of cost sharing ways you can do that. Same thing also with your operators. So if you do have relations with the hotels, the operators like the attractions or the restaurants, that's also an option as well to give them kind of a mini version of the solution so they can feel part of the ecosystem and understand their impact on the destination itself. So yeah, definitely. I will share everyone's contact information again, just so we can have that. But any other questions, just let us know, but feel free to email the three of us. We're here.
Are you questioned out, Nisha, or can I throw one last one at you?
I'm scared now, but okay.
Just because the theme is spark, and if you could wave the wand, Nisha, what's one KPI you would love to measure, or what is the one ask? Like, if you could, have a blank check, what was one thing you'd like to do with South African tourism in 2025, 2026?
I think if it was my wish to have, as someone that works with data all the time, is to have a central place where everybody puts their data in so that we can analyze across different data sources. And by doing this, we do the best that we can for the country. Instead of just planning, sometimes I feel in silos. Can you just imagine if everybody put their data sources with the data protection, etc., and all of those complications that go into place? But having all of that, when you can look across the data, and from there you're going to get such rich and valuable insights in order to grow this destination. So yeah, if I had to make a wish, that would be my wish. And I think it's possible. I do think it's possible. And I think with technology evolving the way it is, it's going to be easier to do going forward.
I think that's a great answer. I'll give Data Appeal one more plug. The AI functionality that Hannah and her team is introducing now and going forward, being able to ask those one curveball questions, Nisha, being able to type in that simple question and get the answer you want, not just a data report, but like honing in on, did this campaign work? How's this destination traveling? Those kind of things. I think it's really exciting for the tourism industry. I'm not afraid of AI. I think we've been using it for years. And I think the ability to make our jobs easier so that we can get on to the actual work instead of having to pull a data report for 3 to 9 months or waiting for a traditional survey is super exciting for this industry. So if you haven't had a look at the AI functionality of Data Appeal, then please set up a demo with Hannah, because embrace it. It's really going to make your lives a lot easier.
Exactly. I love it's the former kind of CMO of New York City. She said, treat AI like an intern. And it's something that stuck with me and resonated with me quite a bit over the last few years. It's something, take advantage of it, use it, exploit it. That was kind of how she treated it. And I 100% agree. It won't replace us, but we need how to learn to work with it. So. But thank you, Ben. Yeah, it's definitely, I think the with the generative AI especially coming out, I mean, I'll say Data Appeal, we've been using AI for years, a decade now, just because it's been part of that semantic analysis that we do behind the scenes. But the fact that we can now leverage that to put all of this data together to tell that story and to offer recommendations, it's really incredible.
Yeah, I can't even quantify how many times a DMO say, I just need this one question asked, and I'm like, it's right there in your in your dashboard. But like, just to be able to have that real answer in real time, that's only going to help Nisha and her DMO global colleagues around the world. So cool.
Exactly. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, staying up late, waking up early. We'll let you go, but we appreciate it so much. And if you're curious, the recording will be out within a day or so. So watch out for that if you'd like to share externally.
Can I say just one thing?
Of course, Nisha.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Hannah, for having me. Thank you to everybody that's on the call. Please visit South Africa. We'd love for you to come and We've got a new global campaign that's called Come Find Your Joy. So you'll definitely find it in South Africa. So we invite you all to come. So thank
Amazing.
you.
Tell us the best time of year to come and we'll follow the instructions.
Any time of the year is party time in South Africa. So
Perfect,
please.
perfect. Definitely. All right. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. Have a great week. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, Nisha.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks.